At this point, we'll move to number 9, where I will turn it over to Dr. Ross for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board and our community. It is an honor that we have a foundation, those in our community who step forward to support the mission and vision of our district, which is guided every day by 3 questions. Why do we do this work? How do we do this work? And then what are our outcomes? Our vision is that we love and grow our students, a vision that came from the collective voice of our faculty and staff. Through the strategic planning process, we came up with a mission statement, or how, that is focused on academic, social, and emotional growth and development, using the whole child continuum as our way to receive or produce the academic excellence that our district is known for. Now, our outcomes of this process are guided by the objectives of making sure that every child feels loved in our schools and that every child has demonstrated academic growth as measured by 4 performance goals of school climate, teacher and administrator quality, student achievement, and gifted and talented strategies. We are committed to being focused on that growth and development, and at each board meeting we'll present to you a ledger of how our students are doing. This is our scoreboard. We show our fall map projections. As indicated by law, we are to do 3 formative assessments throughout the year. We use measures of academic progress. We saw how many students in our district, if the SC Ready test was assessed at that time of testing, were not on level, and how many were on level. As of winter, we see that we are continuing to work through the challenges of that umbrella, meeting all of the necessary prerequisites to ensure that our students are on track. We also measure our graduation rate. As of February 23rd, 87% of our 9GR students who are to graduate in 4 years are on pace to graduate. That still leaves us that 13% that we work, because we work towards 100%. But we know all students have challenges, and we want to thank our secondary teams, high schools, school counselors, social workers, parents, community members, mentors. It takes a team and a true village to ensure that we're there. Our goal is to get another 3% to meet our strategic plan goal of 90.28. So we're monitoring this each and every day. We report it out weekly. And not only graduating students across the stage within 4 years, but ensuring that they are graduating ready for their world, which is different from our past. And so college and career readiness, CCR, is our measure of ensuring that our students who graduate on time have a skill of hand or skill of mind, and all students with skill of life. Right now, we have 543 students that are not at that point yet. We do have a round of testing, the WIN test that we will do. I'm looking to our Chief of Academics Administration, and we'll present this data after that data comes in. I am encouraged, though, by our teachers and staff. We had a meeting here in this building last week, and that our schools are drilling down on the data, meeting with the staff at the center, and they said, 31 of these students are ours, and we're going to do everything that we can to make sure that those 31 are not on your list, Dr. Ross. So it's a community effort, and I love that behind every number there's a name, and behind every name there's a story, and that our staff is working hard to learn that story. So at this time, I would like to invite our CFO, Ms. Madison Paul, forward to give our monthly financial updates to show that how these figures help us to our bottom line of ensuring that those stories all end in success. So, Ms. Paul.
Thank you. Good evening, Vice Chair Hogan, Board of Trustees, and Dr. Ross. Thank you again for inviting me here tonight to present to you the December monthly financial report. I'd like to start with the revenue report. So here you will notice that for the first time in a few months, our revenues exceed our expenses. So starting in December is when we start really getting some of those property tax money in. Thank you to those early taxpayers that pay before the January 15th due date. So we do have some of that money shown here in the month of December. We also have significant interest on earnings due to the bond issued for Irmo High School. At the state level, we really are showing about 50% revenue collected through December, which is right on target for the time period. You'll notice that the Tier 2 homestead exemption has not yet been received by the district, but that usually comes in the spring. Additionally, I did just want to note that this budget does not reflect the changes that y'all approved in January. Since that was approved in January, it was not approved at the time of this report. We are still working off the old budget. So to date, we have received a little over $94 million in revenue. On the expense side, I do want to take a moment just to go over this. To date, we have expended roughly $89 million. Again, this is $5.5 million less than our revenues at this point. Overall, about 42% of our expenditures. This is right on target. As we know, with our instructional salaries, those are take place really from the months of August through June, and then we actually accrue some of those salaries all the way up to August 15th of the following year. So we're not going to be, from an expenditure standpoint, at 50% halfway through the year. Any questions on the revenue report? All right. Next up, I'll go into the ESSER quarterly report. So starting with ESSER 1. With ESSER 1, the deadline for the final spending was September 30th of 2022. So District 5 did spend all of that money by that date. Most of this money was spent on bus driver salaries during the heart of the pandemic. I did want to note that the South Carolina dashboard that is updated by the Department of Education is now updated for ESSER 1 only. So if you take a look at that, you'll notice that it is updated for LR5, that we have expended all of our ESSER 1 funds, but 2 and 3, as of this moment, are not up to date. Moving to ESSER 2, I did want to spend a little bit more time on ESSER 2 since the deadline for spending this money is coming up on September 30th of 2023, so this current year. So with ESSER 2, we had 4 main categories as listed above. On the mental health side, this is mainly expended on social worker, 4K programs, professional development, and homebound. On learning loss, we have spent significant money on Pear Deck software, academic enrichment camps, tutoring, and also summer planning. On the facility side, we have completed the Crossroads Intermediate School roof replacement, Dutch Fork High School shade structures, and the UV air filtration throughout all of our facilities in the district. And for air quality, we have done a few renovations to the HVACs at Irmo High School and Dutch Fork Elementary School. So again, we do need to spend this remaining roughly $1 million by the end of September of 2023. And I did want to just mention, we do have a small change to the budget that I'll show you at the next update, but I did want to just go ahead and let you know. So we moved about $50,000 from the mental health bucket at the top to adult education for similar purpose for mental health services for adult education. We realized after the COVID-19 pandemic that 17 to 21-year-olds actually make up 50% of our adult education program now. And so we wanted to provide additional support for them. So we did make the request through the South Carolina office to amend our budget to reflect that. So it's not shown yet because we didn't do that until, I believe, January. But when I do your March update, you will notice that that bucket has changed slightly. But again, still serves the same purpose, but we had to put it into the adult ed because that's the correct category for that. And then lastly, on ESSER 3, so several new categories with ESSER 3 that we have allocated here. Our largest expense in ESSER 3 is our clinical counselors, tutoring. We've also have some roofs and lighting replacements and upgrades, and HVAC renovations and summer work. All of this money must be spent by September 30th of 2024. So you'll notice here that we do still have significant balance remaining in ESSER 3. We do plan to still be on track to spend that by September 30th of 2024, but at this time we're still focusing on making sure ESSER 2 is spent by the end of September of this year and trying to get some of these larger projects pushed through with ESSER 3. I'll be glad to take any questions.
On ESSER 2, that has to be spent through September, I'm assuming committed means we haven't spent it yet, but we have a project or expenditure assigned. So I guess this may be a Dr. Ross question, but have you already picked some projects or likely uses of the remaining $1 million?
So I can speak part to the academic, to the learning loss section of that, Ms. Huddle. We absolutely do. We'll continue with our summer enrichment camps again this summer for our students, with our tutoring that's ongoing, our professional development and work for our teachers in the summer, giving them extra days to come in and plan and look at those. So we do have those plans in place for all of those.
Yeah, I had a question. I know that there are a lot of great things that we're doing with these monies, and are we sort of looking at the budget for future? I know some of these are going to be continuing programs, obviously.
Correct.
I mean, if we feel like they're that necessary, and I'm sure that they are we looking at funding and ways to continue funding for these programs?
These are certainly as we talk about the ESSER sunset, a lot of districts will be grappling with, a loss of the revenue that we'll find. I mean, just thinking about ESSER 3, that's $15 million, in which we would use out of the various different pots that would now have to go to the general fund. So you couldn't replace that one for one. A lot of the things that we're looking at, and you'll see in the next presentation about mental health. There are things now that we enjoy that we're going to have to continue. So we're looking at ways of how do we, as we look at this upcoming budget cycle, roll those over into the general fund. So yes, sir, we're looking at that. And another thing that I think we have to also look at is we have, with this new finance structure, we don't have a lot of set variables on determining what next year's budget is going to be. No longer do we have base student costs. EIA doesn't roll up at 100% this year. It rolls up at I think 25-75 kind of contribution. And then we're looking at what is the size of the actual pot versus our ADM. So with all of those variables, we decided that we would wait till after SCASBO's conference. And that way we can say what we will definitely include as ESSER sunsets. So a lot of the things will be continuation, add-ons to additional staff, like instructional hours, or we're not bringing on new programs or new staffs that we can't sustain.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I know you mentioned academic enhancement or enrichment programs. I don't know if we have some sort of measuring stick or how we are determining just how well those funds are being spent, but it'd be a shame to say we're really making a lot of progress in this area, then we don't have any more money. So I'm sure that we'll have to come up with some sort of prioritized list at some point in time. So yeah, well, thank you.
And a lot of things that we have right now, I think that when we look at one-time expenditures, kind of the best uses of these, and when ESSER allowed the pot to grow for heating and air, or these are things that are one time and it will last us for a long time. When it gets in those services, that's where the sunset truly hurts us.
Yes, sir. The only thing I wanted to add is that with ESSER 2 and ESSER 3, the district did a really good job of really prioritizing those one-time expenses. Like he mentioned, they're almost half of what was budgeted for ESSER 2 and for ESSER 3. So those, we would not necessarily need to find funding for the future, but certainly some of the learning loss, the mental health pieces, things like that, we would need to discuss at budget time.
And just one more for the record. In the December, when we report the January, at what point does the contributions of 9.1% go to 18%? Was that on healthcare?
Yes, so on healthcare, as of January 1st, the employer contribution to healthcare expenses went up to 18.1%. So we budgeted for the full year at 9%, but it didn't actually hit until January 1st.
That's going to affect some of those percentages moving forward, correct?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
As part of our annual report, we have outlined as an executive team 3 major challenges: the growth in the mental health issues, what it takes in order to get the growth in ELA and math grade level proficiency, and also growth in student enrollment in the Chapin schools, but the growing facility needs in the IRMO schools, and IRMO includes Dutch Fork as well. But every challenge provides us opportunities. And we see an opportunity as we're working through our 5-year master facility plan to provide the equity and access for all students in the district. We see opportunities of providing students with a trusted adult to provide academic and goal setting for maximizing potential of all students. Mr. Chair, members of the board, and our community, we have seen the effects of mental health prior to COVID, and now as we go through or post-COVID, we are seeing that increase. And our teachers, our staff need tools in order to deal with the challenges of today. With the increase of mental health services, there's an opportunity to develop what the science says is an evidence-based strategy for addressing these mental health, mental illness issues, and that's called social emotional learning program. So at this time, I want to ask that our Chief of Student Services and Planning, Dr. Harris, come forward and share with that he, along with the Office of Academics and Administration with Anna Miller, are working on a district-wide social emotional learning program to address mental health and mental illness. Dr. Harris.
Thank you so much, and to members of the board, the Ross, and members of the community. Certainly a perfect segue for the conversation at hand in regard to a possibility, potential of a district-wide social-emotional learning program. We've spent a lot of time and attention regarding interventions as well as recovery models. We wanted to give some time and attention to preventive measures, and a social-emotional learning program is one such way in which we would do that. On tonight, I have joining me Ms. Jennifer, as they'll come, as I call the name, is Jennifer Felco, our coordinator of social work and parenting, as well as Ms. Beth Hook, our coordinator of mental health. And we have also, as our Dr. Ross mentioned, in partnership with academics and other areas, Ms. Tina McCaskill, who's our director of elementary, who will all share some insights as it relates to a social-emotional learning program with emphasis, again, on just highlights regarding interventions and recovery models, but also the preventive method. And then a word about an idea, some thoughts that we have in terms of a current exploration of programs that would suffice throughout the district. So at this time, I will turn the floor over to these ladies to share with us more about this program.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Ross, and members of the school board for allowing us this opportunity to speak to you. In everything we do, we reflect back. Oh, sorry, I need to do that. Oh, thank you. In everything we do, we reflect back to our District 5 mission. And in looking, you're gonna, okay. And in looking at the whole child continuum as we love and grow all students, we focus on 3 areas: prevention, intervention, and recovery.
So direct service interventions, this is a sample of direct service points for our current school year. These numbers are not intended to demonstrate the full range of duties of these individuals, of these positions, yet highlight some of the data in these service areas for school counseling, school psychologists, social work, as well as our clinical counseling team. And then we also have the broad spectrum programs that are indirect interventions that are available for any student in need, such as our Stop It app, attendance intervention plans, coordination of community resources and services, as well as our Academy for Success and 5, among other examples that are listed here. And then we have recovery services. And in our recovery services, that encompasses our own D5 clinical counseling program that began March of '22, as well as our partnerships with the Department of Mental Health in Lexington and Columbia area, and Care Solace. And these services work to connect students, families, and staff with mental health resources.
And while intervention and recovery services are essential, prevention is critical to addressing the whole child. And for example, District 5 currently provides outreach events such as community resource fairs, parent night outs, as well as Ready by 5 and family engagement. However, in District 5, there is a need for a system-wide plan for prevention. We have prevention programs, but not a system-wide framework for social emotional learning. And as Dr. Ross said, in conjunction with the Office of Academics and Administration, as well as the Office of Student Services and Planning, we've worked together to try to address this system-wide issue. And now we're going to turn it over to Tina McCaskill, Director of Elementary Education, to present on that system-wide plan.
Good evening. So we have been really looking at what schools are doing with SEL, and every one of our schools are doing a great job individually. So this school may have this plan going on, another school has another set of curriculum that they may be using, another school has another idea of what they're using. But once a child moves from, say, one side of the district to the other side of the district, they're learning a whole new plan, a whole new set of expectations. And so as we look at a system-wide SEL program, we've taken some time to really dig into a program called Capturing Kids' Hearts. We've taken some principals with us. We've taken our lead school counselor to do some preliminary training just to let us see what it looks like. We've done some school visits to see it in action in schools. We've seen it in elementary, middle, and high school so that we can see what that looks like. I wanted to stay in the elementary school, just wanted to say that. It was pretty amazing what was going on there. It had been going on for 7 years. But that's the program that we're looking at. Now, you're going to hear lots more information about that coming up soon. But just to give you an idea that that's the title of the program that we're looking at and the process that we're going through to kind of do some research to see if it would be effective here in District 5. So I'll turn it back over to Dr. Harris.
So again, as we conclude this very brief presentation, this was an opportunity to take advantage of this time just to kind of share some ideas, some thoughts, and really catch you up with what has been done, what's currently going on, and some of the direction in which we're currently looking. With Capturing Kids' Heart, we certainly know that this is a program that does not come for free, though we wish that it did. And but so there, with having said that, that means that we'll continue to explore options, continue to look at how we can perhaps even roll out a plan and share with you at a later time with more details related to this district-wide. But it is a comprehensive program that we, again, have explored, have visited several places, and find that this is something that we believe would be instrumental in curtailing some of that regarding social-emotional wellness for our students and our staff, quite frankly, here in District 5. Stand ready for any questions or comments that you may have relative to this brief presentation.
I don't have a question necessarily, but I just wanted to comment that I do think that it's good as a district that this is just a model that we're looking at. My oldest son is in 3rd grade, and I call him a COVID child because kindergarten, they came home. He was home most of 1st grade, and the emotions in general, he's just so, everything is the end of the world. And you know, for a minute, I was like, what am I doing? Is it my kid? But I'm learning as I, speak with his teacher, because I'm really involved in their school. It's a lot of kids kind of in that same age range. And sometimes we as adults don't know how to manage all the feelings. And so how do we expect a 9-year-old to know how to manage all the things? And so I just, from a personal perspective, think it's just good that we're kind of looking at other ways to kind of meet kids where they are. Because he loves school. He's testing this week for gifted and talented, but we're having focused issues and other things. And it's weird stuff like you know, who gets to be the line leader. It's just weird, right? And so, even though they have a system, but if somebody's out, they're fighting over like who gets to do it today. And it's like those little things that you don't know how to work on necessarily at home, because I don't have 17 kids at my house, and helping them figure out those emotions. So I just wanted to comment for what it's worth that, you know, I think programs like this are important, because I do believe that kids are just dealing with more on an emotional level than a lot of us ever had to deal with when we were their age.
I thank you so much for sharing that. If I can comment on that, because you're absolutely right. It is not completely and holistically about the students and what they're dealing with, but the truth of the matter is we're all dealing with something one way or another. So this is an opportunity, based on what we've learned so far, to figure out how can we systematically bring it back down to earth, if you will, and do the basic things, as I heard you say, that really help us get through the day, individually and collectively throughout the system. So thank you for sharing that.
Soto?
I was just wondering if you had any examples of things that you found impressive about this program.
Sure. So the program is designed really around adult behaviors. So it trains our staff how to handle the 17 students in the classroom that have all of these needs going on. It talks about really helping students learn to own the classroom behaviors, the classroom environment, so that they become a part of it. It's not that we're telling you what your expectations are. We develop a contract together, and we talk about this is how we would expect to be treated in this classroom. So when I walked into the schools that we went to in Charleston and County, we were looking at walking in. There's an ambassador that walks up. We had a kindergarten child that walked up and said, "Welcome to our class. Would you walk over with me to my contract?" They walked over to their contract that's posted on the wall. They read the contract and said, "Now, do you agree to abide by this in our classroom?" And I said, "Well, I do. I absolutely do." "Well, would you sign your name?" So I signed lots of contracts that day in all levels, but they ask if you're willing to abide by these rules in their classroom. And when I said, "So what happens if somebody doesn't abide by this in your classroom?" What happened? "Well, we call them out on it. They got it. This is what we agreed to. We signed this. We agreed to this." Are there kids that don't abide by it? Yes, there are. But there's ways that the adult is taught how to handle that in a very non-aggressive, non-threatening way. And students were able to talk to you about, yes, if I do this, this is what's going to happen. This is what I'm choosing to do. We had our tour guides at the elementary level were so just articulate in the way that they could talk about behaviors. And there was one little girl that said, you know, she talked about her assistant principal. "She's the one that turned me around. I came from another school. She brought me in and taught me how to behave and how I was supposed to react in certain situations. I now know what that contract means on the wall." She's a 5th grade child talking like this. Now, this school had been implementing it for 7 years, so that was a very long-range implementation. The middle school was in their 2nd year, and in a year where it had been a huge rezoning. So really their first year pretty much repeated the 2nd year. But again, we walked in classrooms where the kids knew exactly what to do when they walked in. A teacher knew what to do, how they were interacting with each other, greeting each other at the door. You know, going back to that standing at the door, "Hey there, good morning, how are you doing?" And knowing what that child needs and reading that body language right away. So that's probably a longer answer than you wanted, Ms. Huddle, but it was amazing.
That was perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Satterfield?
I don't really have a question. I just want to say thank you for what y'all are doing. I mean, I can tell you 40 years ago when I first started teaching, children were just different. The needs were different. And so this is a continuum that we're going to have to continue to think outside the box, be creative. Don't be afraid to, try something new and different. It's kind of like we're trying to catch up, playing catch up all the time. But thank you for what y'all are doing.
Yeah, sorry, thank you. Just real quickly, on the slide prior to this, there was a website listed. What exactly is that website for?
That's where the definition for SEL came from.
Okay. And in relation to that, I was going to ask, and this is just something that I noticed during the campaign, especially after you talk to a lot of people out in the public, there's a wide variety of opinions and understanding, and probably more so misunderstanding about social emotional learning. Is this the website that people can go to find out what it is, and perhaps more importantly, what it is not?
Thank you for asking that. And you're exactly right, Mr. Scully. There is a lot of misinformation about what social emotional learning is and what it is not. So we feel like it was very important for you to all understand what our definition in School District 5 is. And this is kind of what our definition of SEL is in our district. And we usually follow the Castles model, if anybody wants to do some research on that. But Castles is the one who's really done a lot of research on social emotional learning and that systematic approach to self-control and self-advocacy and self-awareness, so that way we can teach those self-regulation skills to our students.
Thank you, and I really appreciate that clarification on what it is versus what it is not. I think there's been a lot of misunderstanding when we say SEL on what it is. Right now in a district, with all of the hard work that our teachers are doing, our staff are doing, we have 30 suicide risk evaluations a month. It's hard to say. We have 1,556 counseling sessions a month in our district. And our teachers need those skill sets to handle that. And so it is important that people know exactly what it is and how to manage it. When I hear Ms. Snipes talk about line leader, that hit home, right? And I know how a third grader or a second grader responds to not being the line leader. And it's not so much the line leader, it's how do you deal with these tough emotions that our children have. We look to adults sometimes for the models, and we don't have the models there. And so it's really good that in our pre-service programs, we don't get those skill sets of handling a class of 25 with stress, anxiety. We've seen even before COVID, 6.3 million teenagers diagnosed with anxiety disorders. That was before COVID. So we know that's increased. One of the things, when you talk about the sunset of the ESSER funds, is we brought on 9 clinical counselors with the ESSER funds. And we need every last one of them plus, right? And so those are things that I really applaud this group of bringing 2 departments together, academics and student services, to do that whole child umbrella, with the promise that for teachers who are listening, this PD is not an add-on. It is incorporated within. So the same, we're not increasing the time to, you're in training time, but giving you tools on reading that body language, what is the language and vocabulary that those kids are using, and that we can use it all across the system. So we look forward, this is an initial conversation. We want to work together with community and with our board until we develop a full district-wide set of practices and vocabularies to address this. And so capturing kids' hearts right now is something that we see as a kind of a front runner in that race of meeting all of those. And we look forward to that conversation. So all of this is to our overall vision and mission. And Mr. Chair, members of the board, that is our D5 story. That concludes the superintendent's report, and we stand for any questions.
Any questions from the board members? I'm seeing none. Dr. Ross, it's always invigorating.